Would you like to be somebody who understands how dissociation can decrease your attractiveness to a potential partner? Then listen to this entire video where I explain how being dissociated, so either being out of touch with reality and or your mind and body being out of sync, can make you less able to raise healthy children, and that makes a potential partner instinctively think that you are incompatible with them, or a suboptimal partner, let's say. So before we get into this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Let's get into it. So I've already made previous videos on what dissociation is. I'll put them in the description below. You can check them out to understand the concept with more depth. So dissociation, in short, is basically when you are out of touch with reality and or your mind and body are out of sync. So for example, you might try and manipulate the way you experience the truth of reality, like create your own false ideas of what really occurred in a situation. Or let's say your body feels something, like you feel bad about, or there's something that's not right about your body, like it's in pain, but your mind doesn't detect it. It doesn't realize your body's in pain. Then you would be out of sync. Okay, so I made a previous video on how we are actually why are we inclined to be associated? So the opposite of dissociation. I'm not sure whether that's the right psychological term, but association here, I'm referring to being in tune with reality and your mind and body being aligned, being in communication with each other, and being able to be in sync with one another. Like, why are we inclined to be associated? Because when we dissociate, we suffer. Like, I've experienced it myself. I was like in a permanent grumpy, bad mood, and I had a relatively subtle case of dissociation, I think, but it can happen very frequently and to a lot of people, and I think it just makes you dissatisfied deeply, and well, not that deeply, but like you suffer. So it's not good for you. So hence we would be inclined to be associated. Okay, so why would being dissociated repel some potential partners? So when you dissociate, you are essentially not being yourself, because you are, for example, possessed by an idea, or you are out of touch with your body, let's say. Let's say you're, in regards to being possessed by an idea, let's say you consider yourself a hustler. You work hard, you grind, hustlers don't sleep, they only nap. You're all about that, when actually your body is exhausted and you don't want to let go of this hustler identity and you're possessed by it. That would be a kind of dissociation. And this is a red flag in many ways when somebody is considering you as a long-term partner. Humans have an instinct for detecting people, whether people might be a reasonable partner, as in somebody who would be good to connect your genes with and produce healthy offspring and then raise healthy offspring. So this ability to detect if someone might be a better partner, a good person to partner up with, functions at an unconscious instinctual level. You can be conscious of it, if you try to deduce why you find some people attractive, you can try and figure it out. But it tends to work independently of whether you like it or not, and unconsciously for a lot of people. And this doesn't mean it always works. Like, it's a good tool to detect if someone's healthy or good for you, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're able to listen to it. Like, you see a lot of people who are together who don't really look like they should fit together, and you may know it from your past relationships that the people who you had a relationship with really weren't the right people for you, but you were still in a relationship with them. Hence our ability to choose good partners is quite questionable. And there are so many factors that manipulate our decision making in regards to romantic partners, like our ego, psychological complexes, and other factors. But still, deep down, I think we have an instrument that classifies potential partners, and you can ignore it, but it is still there, I think. So an example would be of detecting attractive or healthy partners at at like an unconscious level would be was shown in an experiment called the sweaty T-shirt experiment, where they got a group of guys to wear T-shirts for 2 days, I think, without using any deodorant. And then they, of course, after the 2 days, the T-shirts smelled, and they gave them to women and asked them to smell the T-shirts and ask which T-shirt was attractive to them, which one smelled attractive. And it turns out it was those men. Well, there's something called MHC, which is a major histocompatibility complex, and it has to do with your DNA and your immune system, in that your immune system, if your immune system is able to, I think, if it's a strong immune system and is defensive against a lot of different types of invaders, then I think you have like strong MHC factors or something like that. Or it's diverse MHC factors or genes. And the women were attracted to those men who had different MHC genes, because if they would connect with them, their kids would have an even more diverse set of MHC genes, which means their immune system is more defensive, is defensive against more different type of invaders, hence its rate of defense or survival is higher. And so the women were attracted to those men who had different MHC genes more than those who had the same, and they were attracted to it by smell, which is kind of like an unconscious thing. You don't really choose it. So that's an example, and of course the reliability of this experiment is questionable. I know it's been replicated once, so there is some reliability, but yes, one should always be careful with these experiments. So now let's move on. There are 2 reasons here why I think somebody will be less attracted to you if you are dissociated. Number 1, you might change, and that is frightening. Long-term committed relationships need trust, and when you are dissociated, you are essentially not being yourself. Hence, the probability of you becoming yourself is there, and that might mean you become a different person. Like, your partner might really like the fact that you're so passionate about hustling or whatever, and you have this fire inside of you, but that's not actually you. And maybe one day you snap out of the dissociation, become associated, aligned, in sync, and then you are somebody totally different, and then your partner thought you were this person, and the whole narrative of your relationship suddenly changes. They don't know who you are anymore. You're a different person, and their whole memory together with you is also suddenly different. Like Jordan Peterson has talked about this, how if you change in a relationship and you suddenly become someone who your partner could not have predicted and thought you weren't, then their life collapses, because they no longer know anything about their past, the current moment, and what the future will hold. And that is frightening. That's chaos, and that's stressful, and that is to be avoided also. So, and it's not only that you will become yourself, but you might actually have the proclivity for dissociation, and you might dissociate and become someone else, like change the idea you were possessed by to a different idea, and then you're suddenly somebody else. So, and it might also indicate, if you're dissociated, like proclivity or that you might have some mental illness, like a personality disorder. I think, but I'm not 100% sure, that borderline personality disorder has a tendency within people to manipulate the truth. That people manipulate their truth, people with borderline. Like, they can create false images of their own experiences in their head. And borderline is a terrible mental illness. Like, it's quite sad, and I have people around me in my vicinity who have it, and it is painful to watch how it affects their behavior. And I know borderline is genetically transmitted, and the harshness of nature would prefer people to connect or partner up with people who are strong and healthy, and and borderline threatens your well-being, not only of yourself but the people around you. And people might instinctively not want to connect with people who have borderline, because then the children might have borderline. And I think the thing is, I think everybody is kind of mentally ill to a degree. It's just like on a scale, and you can be mentally ill also because of your circumstances and your sort of deleterious way of life, not just genetically, not just because of your genetics. So the second reason why people might be deterred from potential partners who have or who are dissociated is because it shows some kind of immaturity, like underdevelopment, an unhealthy psychological orientation. Like if you dissociate, it might mean that you are underdeveloped because you have fallen for an idea or an ideology and you are not developing your own ideas, your authentic self, and that which would communicate sort of maturity and sort of wisdom. And maybe there are several reasons why you might dissociate and might try and be somebody who you're not, because, for example, you might be insecure about who you truly are. You feel like your true self is not worthy of others, so you try to be somebody who you're not and who you think people will like. And if you're immature in that sense, you're underdeveloped, the probability that you will be able to sort of raise healthy kids is obviously put into serious question then. And people will detect that, potential partners. Like you prefer to connect or be together with somebody who is healthy, developed, and mature because they have a broader skill set in handling the difficulties in life. Whether if you're immature, you're still underdeveloped, you have a more like your skill set is confined. It's quite limited. And you obviously don't want to project your immaturity onto your kids, because your kids then learn, okay, if this is what adults are like, they're immature, they get possessed by ideas, they may adopt that themselves, and that's unhealthy. And of course, you don't want that. And at least nature doesn't want that, or the human species, sort of very simplistically speaking, doesn't want that. So, in conclusion, dissociation indicates unattractiveness to a degree because your ability to raise healthy kids is put into question, and it signals a kind of unhealthy orientation, like an underdeveloped state, like this immaturity, and it also indicates that potentially there's a threat that you might change and you're not being yourself, and in the future you might become a different person, and that's quite frightening for a partner, because if you trust somebody and then they suddenly become somebody else, your world collapses. That the world you thought you understood is no longer existent, and that's frightening. Yeah. So please leave a comment below whether you agree with what I have said in this video, and maybe you have experienced it yourself, or whether you are conscious of if you like somebody, you're attracted to somebody, but then you see how they're dissociated in some way, that it actually deters you, or you might question whether you'd want to be with this person in the long term. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening.